course, my dogs. You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or anywhere you're listening to this podcast. And then tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Our other show sponsor is the RangeBuddy.App. If you haven't checked that out, get over to the your local app store, either on Android or iOS, and download the RangeBuddy.App. It's a collection of over 130 shooting drills, sorted by the required target and filterable by the skills worked. The only virtual instructor component that I'm aware of. It's a pretty cool little training tool for you to use. There are integrated leaderboards for each one of the drills, as well as a training or practice session tracker, so you can log and track your performance over time and see how much better or worse you're getting the more you shoot. Tonight's episode 83, we are joined by Robert Vogel of Vogel Dynamics, and we'll be discussing his real speed pistol course. Your hosts, as always, are Andy Montoya and myself, Jeremy Gill. Judson, if you're out there, we miss you, buddy. Come back and join us on the podcast whenever you're feeling up to it. Cool. So let's get into it. I'm going to share this stuff out through a couple different social media platforms. While we're doing that, Robert, go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the firearms training industry.
Sure. My name is Robert Vogel, and I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and I started shooting when I was a little boy and got really into handguns like when I was about 15. About then I decided I wanted to be a police officer. And that was my initial interest, was the whole, just the real side of it. And then it was just, I would read all the gun magazines back then, kind of before the internet, really before we had it. And I at a high school and then police academy, and I heard about this thing called IDPA and USPSA, and I started shooting that, and I did really well. And I kept going with it. And, to me, like the competitive stuff, the first 5 to 7 years was total hobby, kind of like it is for most people, spending all my money on bullets, match fees, and stuff like that. And then kind of got to the point where I was winning some state matches, and then I ended up winning nationals and worlds. And I could kind of go on about this. Yeah, mid-20s, I started, with getting some sponsors and whatnot, and just started at a certain point. I realized, kind of breaking even here. And people started asking me to do classes. So I really didn't have an intention of doing that in the beginning, but when people started asking me to do those, I started doing them, and then it just kind of slowly became a second job, and then got to the point where I left being in full-time law enforcement. That's been 11 years now. So been doing it. Yeah. I travel around a lot. Yeah, I have a range in my place in Ohio, and I do a lot of private classes there, and then I'm on the road teaching classes at any number of other places.
If you had to choose the one thing that you're most well known for, what would it be?
I guess if I had to guess based off what people had told me, probably the grip. I guess I get a lot of questions and comments about the grip. I know when I made the PNC videos back in like 2011 or so, those got put out there quite a bit, and I think the grip was kind of the one that got the most views and everything. So yeah, that's what I would say. I could be wrong though.
I agree. If you Google Robert Vogel or Bob Vogel, either one, first thing you're going to see is a whole Google page full of discussion on grip. So yeah, I would agree with you there. You're definitely the person that's known for the grip. But let's talk about that just a little bit before we get into the class. What makes the grip so significant in your mind that it's made you kind of synonymous to talk about it?
The absolute practical shooting, you're talking about the speed stuff, is where the grip really matters. So, and one thing, I'm not saying I invented it, but the idea of turning your hands into each other in the word torque, I hadn't heard anybody else say that. And I know when I started teaching that, I was kind of doing it before I realized I was doing it. And then when I started teaching it, I just got a lot of feedback from that, from a lot of guys like, oh, that really makes a difference. I can really feel the recoil control and everything. And so I think that was really the start of it.
When we're talking about the Real Speed Pistol course, before we do the deep dive, what are the minimum requirements? Is there a minimum skill set that a student needs to have before attending that class?
And there's really not. And I think that's kind of hard to measure. I mean, it's not for somebody that just picked up a gun for the first time last week or anything, but it's you got to be safe. You want to be somewhat familiar with your gear and whatnot, but there's definitely no set in stone like you have to have done, competed in matches or anything like that, because it's definitely a mixture of people that have shot competitively and then a lot of people that haven't. And so, just make sure you're not like a straight up beginner and you're safe. That's obviously the main thing. And that's pretty much what I tell people. So, and one thing I guess is just, so guys in the bigger group classes, the only thing that is just when somebody's just so much beginner, they're holding everybody up because they don't have their megs right and they don't know how the gun works and all that stuff. So, but you don't have to be too far along, I don't feel.
What about the required gear? Is it a 1,000 round course, 500 round course? How many days?
Generally 2 days. I mean, I have like a 1 day option. A number of my classes. There's a number of times where it ends up being 1 day for whatever reason, but generally it would be 2 days. Ammo, 700 minimum. I mean, it used to kind of be 1,000. Ammo shortage and everything. Anyways, what people end up shooting is usually around 700 rounds. That can vary a little bit, not just off how many students, but the range set up, the type of targets available and things like that. Because I don't have an exact thing we do. We don't do the exact same thing every class, every location, because there's just too many variables. But equipment is very basic. I mean, the pistol, holster, minimum 3 mags, unless it's a single stack, and then 4 or 5. And 2 mag pouches. So it's just that's the standard gear. There's nothing more to it than that. So
you mentioned earlier, just in the last 2 minutes or so, that it's really geared towards, or it's not geared towards a specific student. They don't need to be like a GM or a masterclass level shooter. Are you finding that the makeup of your course, like what percentage of your students are competitive shooters, and then what percentage comes from like a strictly defensive background?
Yeah, I don't know. All in all, it's a total guess, but man, I would say probably like 50-50. 50% that have at least competed some, and 50% that haven't. But a lot of the 50% that haven't, like they have an interest in it. They might want to do it. They might want to try it or whatnot. So, I mean, there's a lower percentage are like guys that like, well, I'm not going to compete. I don't plan on doing it at all. Most of them are open to it, but probably 50-50 between guys that actually do it and guys that don't.
Nice. Have you seen a shift in that dynamic or in that makeup of the students over the last few years, or has it always kind of consistently been that way?
I honestly think, with me personally, I think if anything, or in 11 years of doing this full time for a living, I think it's probably a higher percentage now that don't compete. I think I used to have more guys like that really just only competed, or that competed, and now it's just more guys that don't compete, I think. And that sounds kind of like almost like it could be the other way, but that I really think, based off just in my head of what people have told me, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. We see a lot of stuff hits the defensive world after competitive guys have kind of already been doing it for a while, specifically shooting fast, right? And now we're getting back to this discussion.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
so now
definitely the factor that I was going to say. I always heard Tom Jarrett a long time ago I heard him send some videos somewhere say something about, law enforcement, military are generally like, and I throw the self-defense community in there too, but 15 to 20 years behind the learning curve on some things. And that's kind of a whole nother conversation. That was more with the equipment and stuff, but that just popped into my head.
Yeah. No, it makes sense, and it kind of tracks with I guess a couple of the other performance pistol instructors that we've talked to. Is it's they're well known in the competitive shooting community, and then you start to get some instructors that are competitive shooters, and then they primarily teach defensive handgun stuff, and it kind of helps spread. So going over the course description, you're talking about shooting fast and accurately. That's 100% competitive world. It's also 100% of the defensive world. What are some of the challenges that your non-competitive shooters have compared to the competitive shooters? Is it ramping up the speed? Is it ramping up the accuracy?
Yeah, it's mostly the speed thing, because just a much smaller percentage of people that have competed at all have really ever been pressed for speed. They just haven't. I think they're getting better now, but going through the police academy and all that stuff, it's still so much of the par time. Like, okay, this under 8 seconds and you're good, and it doesn't matter if you do it in 7 seconds or 4 seconds. It's just all about your hits, which is kind of dumb, because obviously the same hits faster is better. And just people haven't been pressed for time. They haven't really used a timer. They're not familiar with that, and that jacks them up, of course. And so that's really the main thing. Is that the basics are the same. And I'm teaching people. I feel like performance shooting is what I'm doing, and just the skill sets that I'm not foreign. I could say a bunch of stuff, obviously, but I'm not foreign to tactics and whatnot. But I'm primarily teaching people how to just shoot better, and just pure performance shooting skills. You can't bullshit that. That's what I like about it the most. Is there's not subjective really at all. This is how good you are. This is your hits. This is your time. They both come together equally to form your score or your performance. It doesn't have to be a competition only thing. And voila. And this is how good you are. Now you're trying to get better. And so I can have all these theories, and there's tons of arguments and things like that. But at the end of the day, does this give you a better performance or not? And that's a lot of what I focus on.
If we're talking about the defensive shooting skills, here lately we're getting back into. I'm seeing the argument coming up again about outshooting your headlights, jailbait splits. Where do you kind of fall on that side of the argument? Can somebody shoot too fast?
I don't think so. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of obviously a lot of different circumstances. But when the decision is made to shoot, why on earth would you not shoot as fast and accurate and hit the target as quickly as you can, as many times as you can in that time frame that you have? You don't know what the time frame is going to be. So you can kind of what if a lot of things. I mean, I kind of see where some people are maybe coming from with that a little bit, but it to me overall sounds like a convenient excuse for not being as good. I separate the shooting skills from the decision making a lot, and they're tied into each other. But I really kind of feel it's a separate thing. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to shoot as fast and accurate as you can in that moment, and that's just
when we teach concealed carry, and you have a plethora. We're considered gateway instructors, right? We have a plethora of students that'll come out. I don't know, we had 20 something on the range this last weekend. You'll get the guys that'll show up in tactical clothes and Solomons, and you'll get the brand new soccer mom that's like, here's a box and there's a gun in it. Show me how to shoot, right? And very often you'll see a lot of people, they want to go fast right away. And my thing is, like, I always tell them, look, before you can shoot fast, you got to shoot accurate. Then we blend that fast and speed in as much as possible. And so when I hear this out shooting the headlight stuff, like, I can kind of see that other side of it. If you don't have the skills and the proficiency to shoot fast, you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to that, because you're right. I mean, people get into it. People want to shoot fast, and they want to shoot way faster than their ability, and that is a very human nature thing to do. And it's a problem. So you got to be able to shoot first. I mean, then, if I'm teaching people that haven't really done that much at all, obviously, we're starting out slow and accurate. You have to shoot somewhat accurately before you can sacrifice some of that accuracy for speed. It's just, it just kind of depends on the parameters that you put on it. And so I like a lot of the the number one thing I like about the competitive stuff, I always say, it's the way that it's scored. You know, whether you're talking about APA with time plus or USPSA hit factor, that's a bit more complicated. But I think that's just a better balance of accuracy and speed than doing the just under a certain par time type thing. Yeah, I think a lot more places have came along to that. Most places like the police quals and stuff are all still par time. I kind of understand at a basic level why it's that way, but a lot of it is just how it's measured. And if you measure it the way it's scored in the competitive arena, it pushes you to be at another level that most people wouldn't do otherwise. If that makes sense.
Well, let's talk about that in your class specifically. Do you start with kind of a beginning standard and then wrap it up by the end of the standard to see where you've improved? Or do you have kind of like a goal that you want them to set? How do you work that in your class specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of things. What I've done starting off shooting wise, after obviously lecture and talking in certain subjects, is like go up to targets, IPA, USPSA, 15 yards, you know, and we shoot some 6-shot groups starting off. And, you know, first off, it's just first ones are no time limit. So can you shoot 6 shots in the 0 or in the A with no time limit at all, right? And you want to be able to do that. If you can't do that, then that's really what you should be focused on. And then if you can do that, then how fast can you do that? And I'm talking like low ready start. So there's no excuse for having a bad grip, like low ready start, 15 yards, up 6 shots. Just and if I'm working with people more on a private class level with less people, then you can time them more individually and spend some more time on that. And that's really what if I had to do one thing to measure how good somebody is, that's kind of what that is. And so, again, low ready start, 6 shots, 15 yards. How fast can you shoot A's? And like I came up with 3 seconds is kind of the standard. Like world class is under 2. You gotta be able to do that under 2. But 3 seconds is good. Some people can't do it at all. Some people do it 5 seconds. And so I guess if I had to pick one kind of standard, it would be that. And then you start delving into like, well, how fast are your, let's say your split times. And a lot of guys like cop shooters and whatnot, people that haven't competed, haven't used much on a timer, you can get at that 3 seconds in about 50 split, maybe a 40 split. But then, you know, you look at what a grandmaster can do that, and they can down to like a 20 split. And that's a huge difference. And so eventually you kind of want to get down to that point. And then I do some other drill. One of my favorite ones to do, especially with cops, is like just give them a par time, a certain time. And you can different distances, different amounts of times. And like, okay, how many A's can you shoot in this amount of time, like in 4 seconds at 10 yards. And there's no limit to that. And so if I had to measure how good somebody is, like another standard is how far away can you go and still actually shoot the gun as fast as you can and say all A's or all zeros. So if you stand somebody, even somebody that sucks at 2 yards, and they can shoot the gun as fast as they can shoot the gun and keep everything, say, in the A. Okay, you can do it at 2. Now, can you do it at 4 yards? Can you do it at 6? How about 8, 10, 12? At what distance do you actually have to slow down your shooting in order to, and the world class level, I kind of feel like it's still out to like 15 yards ish, can shoot the gun almost as fast at 15 yards as at 2 yards, and still, for the most part, you know, shooting A's or zeros. But most people, you know, some people fall off at whatever, 5 yards, some people at 7 yards, at 10 yards, whatever it is. And so at what point do you not have this skill set, like with obviously with your grip, with your trigger control, with your ability to see the sights, at what point does that fall off to where you have to slow down? So yeah, I do a lot of stuff like that.
What does the first half of that class look like from a student's perspective? Is it, I know, I'd imagine you're spending, a little bit of time on the range safety brief, the medical stuff. So after that, what's that first couple drills that you're running students through?
Yeah, I mean, I generally, it varies, but I mean, I talk for 45 minutes to an hour, like at the beginning of the day. Obviously, the safety stuff doesn't really take all that long, but I mean, I really delve into the grip and trigger control are two big things that I like to talk about that in a little bit of detail before people shoot at all. Unless I already know it's certain people and they've they're at a certain point. But so, I mean, after that, we do the 15-yard thing at different speeds. And I probably more than anything, the first half of the day the first day is usually trigger control. I probably harp on that as far as more than anything else. And generally, at least 80% of people have trouble with that. And so when we shoot the slow speed, the medium speed, the faster speed, whatever that is for you. And then the whole point of all that is to be able to shoot a centered group. So after you've shot all these groups at different speeds on your target, you look at your target, look at the pasters on your target. Are they centered? I almost don't even care as much how big the group is. Are they centered? Do you have an equal number of shots, high, low, right, left, from that very dead center? And probably everywhere I go, all the classes I do, usually maybe 20% have a centered group. Average. The other 80% do not have a centered group. So they are clearly left or low typically, or maybe it's a different direction, they're left-handed or whatever. But so that's a big thing. And if everywhere you go, only 20% of people are able to do that, I guess that's why I think that deserves a lot of time and attention and talking about.
It's interesting that you mentioned trigger control. Because there seems to be this conversation that you just crush the grip, and whatever you do to the trigger, you do to the trigger. Talk a little bit more about the trigger control aspect and why you think it's especially from the grip guy, right? Like you're well known for the work that you do with the grip. I guess talk to us why the grip can't overcome or why you wouldn't want the grip to necessarily overcome any trigger control issues. Go ahead.
Actually, I want to cut in because I want to add a little bit more to that too, because I want to get into this detail too, because oftentimes when I try to teach trigger control, right, basically I keep it simple. Of all the triggers, it's nothing but a lever, right? If you have a flip light switch, you walk over there, you touch the light switch, and you flip it on and you flip it off. There is no like flip it on slowly, and then now, right? And so I often teach this, hey, it's just a lever. We have to press it straight back. And I still, like, even me as an instructor, there's something I'm missing, because even new students, experienced students still don't get it. I can say that till I'm out of breath of like how much this is a lever. Once you touch the trigger, we're pressing it straight back and releasing it. Next thing you know, you'll see them creep the trigger up and then wham. So I want to add to this question, because I know you're going to talk about it, and I wanted that thought process in there.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, and there's a lot of different aspects to it. Obviously, the whole, controlled, prepping the trigger a little bit versus accelerated or whatever terminology you want to use. But I mean, the hardest part is just at a simple level, which is what things should be at without using a bunch of fancy words. I mean, it's your ability. The hardest part about shooting a handgun, hands down, is your ability to move that finger by itself without moving the other fingers and the rest of the hand. And our bodies do not want to work like that. I'm convinced the human body and our human DNA we're not designed to work like that. And it's two factors. I mean, the faster you're moving your finger and the more poundage you have to apply with it, which simply means the faster you're shooting and the heavier of a trigger you have to press, the more apt you are while you're doing this to do a little bit of the same thing with those other fingers. And that's what moves the gun, because the finger itself is not what moves the gun off the target. It's the other fingers, almost always, the rest of the hand. And it's happening so close to the gunshot that people don't feel themselves doing it. The only reason they know they're doing it is looking at the target. So it's trying to overcome that. That's the hardest part, because it's not something that you can explain that to people and people go, yeah, that makes sense. And I can see that. And it's just getting your body to work like that is the hardest part. And so after the medium fast speeds and stuff, I have the students do, multiple shot dry fire. I mean, where you're working the finger, and you could do that with I usually do it with the real gun, and I'm only getting on the Glock. I'm only getting the first trigger press, and then on the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, I am just going through the motions and same range of motion with the same pressure. But actually, you can do that with other things, dry fire mags and other pistols have resetting triggers or triggers that move. But you're looking, when you're doing that, you're looking at the sights and you're looking to see how much they're moving. And guys that do the low left thing, which is 80% of people at speed on average, when they do the dry fire exercise, they are seeing the sights go the direction those shots are going. And they're seeing, and I'm seeing it, but I can't really help it. I can't figure out. And that's the hardest part, because it's not some magical knowledge thing that you're just going to get, okay, I'm just going to do this. It's not going to happen anymore. It's something, it takes a lot of time, overtime, to really train your body to not do that. And so, yeah, that's the hardest part, I think, beyond a doubt. And I can, answer other questions in more detail specific to that, but in short, that's the skill that I usually give to people.
That makes sense. And I haven't seen a lot of, I haven't really seen a lot of attention given to the trigger control. And that's in a couple other classes that I've taken and just in the conversations that people are having in general. So it's refreshing to hear that's actually a good bit of.
Well, it's tough because I think maybe the reason some people don't spend more time on it is because it's not something you're going to implant some magical thing into this student and they're going to be able to have a light switch go off and be able to fix or be able to help or really be able to do much of in an hour or whatever it might be. It's something that obviously they're going to have to go home and you got to go home and do this, man, every 10, 15 minutes every day for 2-3 weeks before it's probably going to make much of a difference. I mean, give or take a little bit. And so it's maybe not a cool thing because of that. I think maybe so it's easier just to kind of you skip past that. And okay, now let's get to this cool stuff and the stuff that you can actually like improve on a little bit. But it's beyond a doubt the hardest thing to master and the most important thing overall in shooting. So I spend a lot of time talking about that.
One of the questions we ask students is, the gear that they actually carry to that class. I kind of want to ask you a similar question. What's your carry gear? What are you in your everyday life? What are you carrying? And your thoughts on the trigger that you have?
Sure. As far as my carry gear, what I actually carry, so I'm kind of like on both ends of the spectrum. I either go really small or really big. So I have a couple of them, J-frame, titanium, 357 Smith & Wesson. It's a 340 PD. I've had two different ones. The one got confiscated by some foreign. That's a whole nother story, but I got it back. Anyways, I carry a J-frame either in my pocket or I carry a full-size Glock. And typically, I carry a pin somewhat, but I'm still, man, I still like I'm so natural to reach for my strong side. I have carried a gun there my whole life, and that's a little more natural to me. And but yeah, as far as gun wise, I usually carry either a J-frame Smith or honestly a Glock 35, a duty gun still. So
are you running a factory trigger on the Glock?
So my duty gun, carry gun, is a factory trigger as far as its factory parts. Now it is the gun that I got 70,000 rounds originally on, and I won my first nationals with, and it's really well worn. So you would not pick that gun up, down trigger, you would not think it's a stock trigger, but it actually is. Okay. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah, selfishly asking for myself because I'm going through, I had an Apex trigger on my Glock 48 and it broke. So I got the replacement and I'm like, man, do I just want to go to a different trigger or do I want to throw that back on there?
I have seen, there's exceptions, but with Glocks across the board, I like the stock parts, especially the stock. When I say stock trigger, I mean too also like the stock trigger bar on my other guns. I will change some of the internals as far as a few different springs or whatnot and polish and do some things. But I really like the stock parts across the board, aftermarket triggers, barrels, like times 5 as far as the amount of malfunctions and problems that I've seen with aftermarket anything with the Glock versus stock. And I just don't, I've still been able to get using the stock parts with the exception of some of the springs, just as good a trigger I feel as a lot of this other crazy stuff. So yeah, that's just how I feel about it.
Makes sense. How's the real speed pistol course evolved over the years?
Evolved. Well, I mean, I do. There's some of the things that are kind of the same standard, and then there's other things, I guess, that have changed as far as different different drills or whatnot. And yeah, overall, not really a whole lot. I guess I think the ability to shoot fast and accurately and all the stuff we have to do hasn't really changed all that much. Now, people focus on different things and use different terminology, but what you're teaching people to do is very much the same, I think, as it was 10 years ago. You know, at least for me, trying to, you know, be the world champion and all that, I don't know how much different I would do if I was like younger and starting out in it now, knowing what I know now. Would I do anything different than I did 10, 15 years ago? Honestly, I don't think so. Not much. I mean, a lot of stuff kind of goes, I think some people, instead of chasing perfection or performance, are kind of chasing from the business side, you know, trying to sell classes and trying to get people to sign up and things like that, and are trying to figure out what's catchy and all this stuff. But does it actually make you better than some of the other stuff? That I don't know. I don't think as much. That's what I think. But
it's grip, sights, and trigger, right? Like, what do you?
I mean, it is. Yeah, it's a combination of those things. Your ability to hold the gun correctly, to manage the trigger, to see the sights. It's a combination of all those things. And like I say, you see different ways of describing it. There's lots of different ways to describe it. Everybody kind of trying to come up with their own way and their own words. And then I'm no different. I guess I have my own way of describing things, but it's all about doing the same thing.
What advice do you have for somebody that's signed up for one of your next courses? What should they do to prepare for the class, or should it just, hey, let's not ingrain any bad habits, just come as you are kind of deal?
Yeah, I mean, you get all different levels of people. So can people ask me about that? And it's hard to give like a short answer to that, because essentially, you know, but like nowadays, I guess I'll just tell people to go out, you know, watch some YouTube videos of people that know what they're doing. And I mean, if you don't know anything, it is so much easier to get educated at a base level now than it was back when I started over 20 years ago, where you had to research and order books and read all this. And now people getting into it, you know, just go on and watch a few YouTube videos and you can get a lot of information from that. You still got to do it. You still got to implement it and train and practice, but at least you get the information. So if I don't really have the time, if I got 2 minutes or I'm replying to an email of somebody that asked me that's generally what I would say. The grip, I mean, learning how to get that ingrained, because that especially, I mean, it's just a lot of repetition, and you know, you're not just gonna, if I show you this different grip, you're not just gonna, oh, okay, I like that, I'll just do that from now on. Like, no, you won't. You'll do it the same way you did it this morning or yesterday. But you just got to know you got to go home and practice after you do this a few hundred times across, or a few thousand times across weeks. Then you're gonna get it. But I'm most of my classes are, you know, really designed to teach people what they got to go back and work on over time to get themselves better. Not that anybody's not going to get better in a day or 2 days, a little bit, but mostly, man, you're going to learn what you got to do over time to get that, because that's just what it takes. It's like shooting a gun's like playing a musical instrument. You know, if you never played a violin, you go somewhere and take a violin class, are you going to, in a day or two, are you going to learn how to play a violin really at all? Not much. A little bit, but I think a lot of people maybe don't realize that. They think there's, you know, these super fast tracks, and I don't know. It depends on where you are. If you haven't done anything and you're very, very beginning level, you can definitely learn a lot and improve a lot in maybe a day or two. But if you're somebody who's been doing it for a few years and you put some time into this, it's going to be minimal. in a day or two how much better you really got. It's more with the knowledge and what you got to go home and do over time. So
I do agree. Everybody's looking for the 2 a.m. infomercial. Do this one weird trick and become a USPSA grandmaster thing, right? Without actually putting in the work. And I think that's the biggest challenge that all of us have, even for ourselves, right? Coming up with the time and dry firing and practicing and make sure you're practicing perfect. I want to go back to the grip thing because I remember taking a class and I don't remember who said it, so I can't give them credit or deceit, but they were talking about the far forward thumbs grip, right? And someone mentioned, well, that's a good thumbs grip for some people, but not others. Bob Vogel is really good at this thumbs forward grip because he has a crushing grip that's like nobody else's. I think you can grip the Captains of Crush like one of the top ones or something like that. So what's your thought on that comment? Do you agree or disagree with that?
With the grip strength thing, well, I'm known for that in the PNPO videos that I did that, back in the day, I guess, whatever, 2011, I had a section on those, I broke those out, and I've been known to carry them around at shows and stuff, and I have a strong grip, and I have strong fingers, but I'm telling you, with the grippers, it's 50-50 between like strength and technique. So I can close a number 3 Captains of Crush grip, right? I can do that, and there's not many people that can do that, but it's because I have mastered the technique. I read a book on guys that closed in number 4. I spent time with this. I studied it. I know just how to do it. If I grab it like most of these guys grab it in a class, I can't close it as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm strong, but it's so when I carry those around and at the number 3, and I'll close a 3, and I'll see some big, super strong looking guy, and he can't really come anywhere close. It's mostly because of that. Now, if we do this grip measuring thing over here where it's just no technique at all and pure grip, honestly, I might be any stronger than him. But I do put a lot of emphasis on that for sure, on having strong hands, and I don't advocate over squeezing the gun. I mean, you grip the gun, maybe 60 to 70% of your absolute maximum force is the optimum level. If I had to put a number on it and guess, the stronger you are, the stronger that maximum strength is, the more that 60 to 70% is, the less the gun moves. So, and the grip makes a difference, I think, with the guns too. I mean, I shoot Glock, and a Glock on average, it's a lighter gun, and it has, more of a staple gun trigger. So those two things right there, I think it makes the grip a little bit more important, and the trigger control thing. If you're shooting, you take an average guy shooting a Glock versus shooting an SS, I'll still call them STIs or CDs or something, big, heavy 40-some ounce steel frame. Now, you don't have to have the mastery of the grip and trigger control as much as you do with the polymer gun, I don't feel. So I think that's some of the reason I maybe put a little more, into that than some of the other guys.
If you could put a number on it, what would you say for like a new or medium experienced student? Like, what would you look for in like a grip strength pound weight if you could put a number on it? What do you need?
The thing with the pound numbers thing is it's not an exact science. Like, I've noticed this with springs and guns and stuff too. For instance, like the Captains of Crush, the number 1 is 140 pounds, I believe. I'm remembering this right. And hundreds of people all over the world that I've handed that to, about 2 guys average, about 2 guys out of 10 can close a number 1 that I hand it to, and that's 140 pounds. So I guess, but so I guess if I had to put a number, maybe that, because I think you have to be able to close a number 1. So, but then you get like the heavy grippers, for instance, it's a different company, and let's say a number 3 Captains of Crush gripper, I believe is 280 pounds. And then a heavy grippers makes a 300, which is supposed to be heavier, but it's not. It's easier. When you do a heavy gripper that's supposed to be 300 pounds, spring beside Captains of Crush that is 280, it's easier. So they're not an exact the springs are just not exact science. Same thing with recoil springs. I mean, how many times I've seen this company's 11-pound spring is actually heavier than this company's 13-pound spring. How can that be? So that's, I guess because of that, yeah, I'm very hesitant to say like numbers wise, because it just depends on where you're going with that.
Gotcha.
I can't even remember the grip strength. I was starting to say the one, I've had a couple people out there that handed me those grip strength measures with the numbers, and I honestly can't even remember what I had. I did okay, but I wasn't anything crazy. I can't remember.
I got you. Is there I also see this on Facebook. These are conversations that Jeremy and I see often, right? About using like captains of crust and grip strength trainers, and people are saying it's causing them more damage to their hands. And is that because of lack of technique and they don't know what they're doing, or is it because maybe we shouldn't solely be using grippers for handgun strength? What's your thought on that?
You have to be careful. Anytime you do heavy lifting with anything, and we're talking about heavy stuff with your hands, like you can hurt yourself. So you definitely can overdo it, and everybody has to really know their body. Like I've overdone it a few times, and thankfully not too much. And I've recognized it and I realized it, and like, okay, well, going forward, all right, man, I can't do this. I got to watch it. With the grippers overall, I found to me personally, I train with the grippers, have my arm all the way out. If I trained with my elbow bent much at all, like especially if it's like 90 degrees, definitely I would get more elbow pain there. So I kind of go all the way out, and I'm 42. I started as a teenager, but I started the grippers when I was like 26. So, and that's going to be different than somebody that's maybe older that's going to start them. So they're not going to be able to maybe push quite as hard. But I don't know if it's different than throwing a baseball or anything else. I mean, at the end of the day, some people get injured quick and easy and other people don't, and you have to just kind of feel it out and know your body. But the heavy duty grippers definitely get your maximum strength up. I mean, the number one thing I can say, earlier on I did the Walmart grippers, and the vast majority of what's out there is just do it 50 times. You don't get stronger that way. You get your endurance strength up, but we honestly don't need endurance strength much with shooting. You're not shooting the gun very long. I mean, how long are you actually going to be physically holding the gun, pressing the trigger, shooting? Probably less than like 5 seconds, maybe even 10. But even then, that's not very long. So it's the maximum strength that matters. So just getting a gripper that you can't close and doing 8 or 10 reps with that a few times every other day is going to be way better strength-wise, rather than getting an easy one and doing it 50 times. But that's what most people will do. Most people, they'll pick a gripper up, and if they can't close it, they'll be like, oh, that's too heavy for me. This one, I can close this one. This is right. No, you actually train on one you can't close. Because if you can't close it, then it means that every rep is 100% maximum, and that's how you get stronger. If you can close it, then it's too easy. So, and I'm a big believer in, just going. I guess going hard with those things. I mean, 100% effort. Like when I do the grip workout, which I don't do as much. That's a whole nother thing. I hit it hard for the first year or two. The last 10 years, like I just pick them up like once a week. And as long as I do that, so far I've been able to maintain the same level of strength. But when you're doing them, it's not a casual thing you do driving down the road to work. Like every rep is like 1, 2, like I'm gritting my teeth, 100% effort on every rep. And I'm a big believer that 100% for a lot of it, 100% for 5 minutes is better than 80% for an hour, as far as how much it's going to get you. But yeah, I mean, can you hurt yourself? Definitely. You can hurt yourself doing a lot of things. And you do the last thing I'll mention with that, I guess, is the elbow pain thing, the extensor bands. I think those are really good. Those help me when you had some elbow pain, the big heavy rubber bands, and just that you can do driving down the road or whatever. You put them over the back of your hands and just open them up, and strengthens the opening muscles of your hands, which we don't really use the opening muscles of our hands that much. I mean, strength wise, but it's a health benefit type thing. It really does prevent injury, is what the experts say and stuff. So that's worked for me.
Makes sense. My kind of deal is, hey, if it takes 40 pounds of grip strength to do something, and you have 100 pounds available to you, it's going to be easier. It's going to make your life, it's going to make your shooting easier. So why not increase your ability? Just like everything else with shooting, right? Like if you're able to shoot, 0.2 splits and you need to shoot 0.4 splits, well, it's easier for you to shoot the 0.4 if you can do 0.2. If you can put 6 rounds in the A zone at 25 yards, you'll be able to do it faster and better at 10 yards or 15 yards.
I mean, that's exactly what it is with that. I mean, because you're going to use 60 to 70% of your maximum strength, and the stronger that you are, the stronger that 60 to 70% is, the less the gun move. I was shooting. I already made Grandmaster. I actually already won a few nationals before I used the grippers, and after I got the grippers, I could tell a difference. Like I wasn't doing anything else different technique-wise, but the gun was just moving a little bit less. So some of those rounds that used to just barely be a C or a down one were finding themselves just now inside. And that's all it was.
Have you found that there's one or two things that your students are able to pick up in your class that kind of has the most benefit? Is it low-hanging fruit? Earlier we were talking about how, you're not going to be exponentially better at the end of a 2-day class, but is there something that you kind of see jumps the needle for most folks?
I guess it just depends on who it is. I mean, some of the, say, lower level guys, there's more for them to learn. So usually with them, it's what the stuff with the grip and the inward torque thing is a big thing. Guys that kind of realize that, and the dry fire, the multiple shot dry fire thing, guys see what they're really doing. Like at the basic shooting level, those are big things. There's obviously, you get into things further with, you get the drawing, the moving, and then in the competition stuff, all the stage stuff, planning and executing and all that. There's tons of different things, but it's interesting because to hear people talk after class. I mean, somebody will come up and say they took this away or this away. Other people would be something different. Just really depends on what skill level they're already at coming to the class and what they're looking to learn. So yeah, it can be a lot of different things.
You said that you've been doing this for, full time for more than a decade. What drives you to continue to do it, man? For me, it's Andy and I were on the range at least twice a month with students. And there are some days where it's just like, and then I have to kick myself because I'm like, hey, this is a blessing. It's a blessing that you're able to get out there and do something that you love and you can teach people something. And then for me, it's usually the student that comes into it and has some fear or apprehension, some anxiety around it. And then at the end of the range session or whatever, they're like, thank you so much. I feel like I believe I can do this now. What's your driving motivating factor?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole gun shooting thing. It's been my passion in life. I mean, since I was a child, and it really hasn't gone away. So I have that my whole mindset in life is with the shooting and just the whole kind of warrior culture mentality and all that. And so, yeah, I like teaching that, and it's gone in different phases. I mean, now the last couple of years, I really have kind of stepped back from competition for different reasons. And I think it's got me liking shooting more. It's almost like I kind of came full circle the last year or two. I'm almost having more fun with shooting because I'm not having to the whole match thing like I used to. And so that I think can kind of feel that in my attitude and stuff with students. But life has to be a balance. So it's just like anything else. I don't care what you do for a living. You do it too much. There's days when it gets old, and if you're this many days in a row on the range, like, gosh, I can feel it. But To me, it's pretty good, I guess, in how it comes to me as far as variety in students and different skill levels and everything. And at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, you're teaching people, most of these guys that go out carrying stuff, I mean, potential life-saving skills. I mean, for real, I've had a number of people that I've taught that have been in shootouts and gunfights afterwards that have called me or emailed me and like, hey man, I got in this and this. I'm glad that's awesome. They didn't come out and say like you saved my life, but like they really were grateful for that, and you could tell there was something there, and that doesn't take very many of those to really, have a lasting effect. So, I just, to me, it's what shooting is at its core. Not trying to knock anything else, but it's not, hitting or throwing a ball. I mean, it's something like has real potential effects in life, and that means something to me.
If you weren't a firearms instructor, what would you be doing? Like, have you thought about like, man, if I wasn't doing this, I'd really like to be?
I mean, I would probably be a cop still. That was my initial thing I wanted to do, and I liked being a cop. And I honestly would have been one. Well, I was at pretty much all of my 20s. I was full-time police officer from 21, where I just turned 22 when I got hired full-time, and I left full-time when I was 30. And I'm actually still technically a police officer. I'm on auxiliary. I don't really do too much, but yeah, if the shooting thing wouldn't have gone the way that it's went for me, I probably would still be a police officer, and I liked that, definitely. So that's probably, I don't know. Besides that, I don't know what else I'd be doing if it couldn't be either one of those things. I don't even want to think about that.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things where every now and then it's something crazy. It's like, man, I had no idea. Like Tim Herron was a freaking race car driver, or coach and all that good stuff. And
was he? Okay. I know Tim a little bit, but yeah, I would be, having done this for the last 11 years, it would be very hard for me to go back somewhere where I had a boss. That's a big thing. I mean, being my own boss and everything lasted like, oh yeah, I would have to figure out something where I was my own boss, whatever that would be.
Yeah, that's hard to, that would be, I'd imagine that'd be very difficult to come back into. Who have been some of your mentors kind of coming up as an instructor? Some people that you've looked up to when you first started doing the thing?
Yeah, I mean, when you say mentors, what comes to mind to me in the competitive world, because in the beginning, the instructor thing was just a byproduct. It was never my original goal. It was to be a champion. I started when I was very young, realized at a very young age, like, man, I could maybe be like a national champion or world champion at this, and felt like I could do it, and that's why I went after hardcore. So so I was a lot of the competitive, the big name guys, If I had to pick one, I would say Dave Savigny. And I'm still friends with Dave. I don't really see him that much, but he was the guy was the face of Glock for, a lot of years, and just won tons of stuff and was doing it with, more or less a stock Glock. And so it was interesting to like read about him in magazines and stuff. And obviously, you got to meet him and shoot with him and became a fellow competitor and friend. And just, I read a lot of the old time of the guys that are dead now, the old time gun guys, Elmer Keith and Bill Jordan, and names that a lot of people don't even know now. I read a lot of those older books. And then as I started doing the instructing thing more, I know who most of the guys are and gotten to know them and, try to learn something a little bit from everybody. But yeah, I guess that's what I would say with that. I don't know if there's anybody, hesitant to name names, because I'll name some people and not others. But
where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
I mean, that's a good question. I kind of like to just kind of continue to do what I'm doing. It's been going good. It was definitely a risk leaving the police department to do that on my own, but now it's been good, and I've been able to, I'm kind of minimalist, so I don't need much. I live below my means quite a bit, honestly, and my value in life is freedom, not things. A lot of people, they do more successful, make more money, and they spend more, and they have to have this. And I'm really not that way. I splurge on some things, but for the most part, I just value like, okay, man, if I don't want to work for this amount of time, if I want to get in a plane and go to the other side of the world and do something fun next week, I can do it. And so I'm just continuing to just try to do what I'm supposed to do, stay motivated, keep my word with what I say, and get ahead in life and have fun and be free. So, try to, I guess, set myself up for the future. Who knows how long I could do this or be healthy or whatnot, or how long I'm going to live. I mean, I just try to be smart about things, but yet have fun at the same time. I don't know.
That's good. That's good stuff. Before we wrap up, I want to get back into the class a little bit more. What are some of the, as an instructor, some of the challenges that you have teaching folks in both the competitive and the defensive space, if any?
Some of the challenges as far as teaching people, I guess there's a number of challenges. The challenges on a individual level versus on a class level. There's trying to think what route I want to kind of say with that. Managing, like teaching a bigger class, trying to manage time, and when you have a lot of students, obviously you versus one, or like a private class with one or two students, you can spend so much more individual time on them. So I guess to me, what pops into my head is just on the bigger classes, trying to tell everybody, which it's hard to do, like all the information that you kind of want to tell them, but you just, because you don't have that much time and you have this many people. So that's, to me, I always feel that's probably one of the biggest challenges, because you have to, you can't do everything that you want to do because of time. And also with the shooting stuff too, I think the challenge, like most of the classes, are what I call line drills. Like a lot of the drills, line drill is anything where all the students can be shooting at the same time, which you have a lot less downtime. You can shoot a lot more rounds. As for the positives, the negatives are you can only do so much standing in line shooting. You're limited to pretty much one target or maybe a couple targets really, really close. You can very little movement, and that's especially in the competitive stuff. And also, I think real life, like movement, I'm big on that. I'm big on being able to move, not just shoot on the move, but move from position to position and do that well comfortably with a gun. And that's challenging to do that in the bigger classes, because the minute you do that, you kind of have to set up an individual drill or something that only a couple people can do at most at the same time, and then you have to wait in line, and some guys are really into that, and some people just don't have the patience for it, and they just want to be on the line pulling the trigger. And so it's always challenging. You can't please everybody. So you're trying to pick based off this group of guys. Okay, what do I feel kind of they want to do the most, or because then what people want to do and what they need to do are not the same thing either. A lot of times, do you just make people happy, or are you trying to get them to be better shooters, and you're trying to find that balance also? So I don't know. Those are all things that are going through my mind a lot of times. I think that I would say are challenges. Yeah.
What's your sweet spot as far as number of students? Like where you're like, hey man, is it 12? I find for me, it's 12 on the range is kind of the great number for me.
Yeah. 12 is a good number. 12 is a good number. I mean, of course I've had, a lot. Usually most of my classes are kind of capped at like 16 or 18. So I've definitely had some over 20. I don't really, like to go over that as an instructor, being just honest about things, because you gotta call that at a level, right? Because it can be challenging. Oh, throw another couple guys in here. Oh, that's more money, right? Same amount of time out there, but I'm getting more money. But at a certain point, you gotta be real. Like, no, I gotta cut it off here for the fairness of the students, and so yeah, it just depends. The better guys, like really better shooters, it works out better with, it's nicer with less people, right? Because they want to do more of the movement, stage strategy, and all that stuff. If you get a bunch of, newer guys, then they're really not going to do much beyond line drills anyway, so it doesn't matter as much, I think, if you have a lot more people. But yeah, somewhere in that 8-12 range-ish, yeah.
The other side of that, though, is with a national instructor such as yourself, it's one of those things where it's not in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but I'm sure there are states that you travel to, cities that you travel to, where classes are selling out, and it's like, man, if I would have taken 2 more students, that would have given 2 more people the opportunity to get out there and train with you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's different ways you can look at it. I've just, I had, because a lot of people ask about that too. I've noticed that a bit lately. I just got a guy today email me. I mean, I get emails a lot and stuff, but like, I'm interested in this class, but how many people are in it? Or how many people is it going to be in it? Because I had bad experience with so-and-so and so-and-so, and I think they put too many people in, and so there's definitely people that are, aware of that, and it's a factor.
I was going to say, I wouldn't say I would go that far, but I am kind of selfish too, because you spend this money, especially for us, because pretty much if we're going to take a national level course, with the exception of Tim, we got to travel, hotel, rental, air flight, all that stuff. And if I'm going to go spend good money to go hang out with Robert Vogel, like, I want as much Robert Vogel Andy time as I can get, right? And then when you go to these classes and you see it's like 25 students on the line, and you're like, ooh, man, I don't know how much I'm going to actually get. Is this going to be a supervised range visit, or is this going to be actually knowledge? But at the same time, as a student, knowledge is what you choose to get out of it very often too, because I see that other side of, students being selfish to the point it's like, I don't get anything. There was too many students. Well, did you even pay attention much?
Yeah.
Because you can learn by everybody else on the line too.
Yeah, that's a big factor, and it varies from student to student too. Because some people, it's about the knowledge and what they're going to listen to on their. Other people, it's just about out there pulling the trigger, shooting. And like I say, there's a big difference there between guys. Me myself, I was always about the knowledge. I knew very young, very early, like, okay, I'm going to have to do a lot of this on my own. I just want the knowledge. If I had a choice between pick the two of shooting, if I had a choice 15, 20 years ago, whatever, between sitting down at a table and talking to him and picking their brain for 2 hours, or going out to the range and just shooting with him, I would have sat there and talked to him 100%. No question about that. And I remember the first few times I got to actually talk with some of the guys, and I just I didn't want to ask too many questions, but I wanted to know what they thought about this or that or whatever. But again, it's a difference in people. Some people just kind of want to get out there and pull the trigger more. Other people will sit there and listen to every word you say and hang on every word.
I agree with that. I'm one of the students, and we've mentioned it before, during breaks, during lunch, I'm sitting there almost with a tape recorder myself and my notepad, because I'm listening to other students. What are they talking about? What are they experiencing with the instructor? And then after, if there's a dinner, cigar and some bourbon, hang out at a fire, man, that right there, you're still paying for so much information in class, because every class I've been to where I've had the opportunity to hang out with the instructor after and students, it's not like, okay, 5 o'clock, it's over. It's like, hey, let's go get some food and continue talking about what we did all day.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is. And as an instructor, it's like you sit down, I'm just sitting there talking to groups of people, whatever size, and you notice if people are paying attention or not, because you can tell the guys that are like, they're listening to what you're saying. And then other guys, they're not rude. Nobody's really rude about it. But the other guys, you can just like, they're not. That guy, he's not listening. Like, he's just not. He's not trying to not, but he just doesn't have the attention span. A lot of, I hate to pick on cops, but I mean, I can always tell the people that pay their own money for classes and the people that don't. So like when you teach like cops for what I would call an agency course, where the agency is paying and the cops is part of their job. Like, they wouldn't be there if they wasn't part of their day. And they're great people, but they typically on average definitely don't have, that's not their thing. They're not really into that. So I don't talk nearly as much to usually there as I will other places, you know. It's just how it is.
I found for myself personally, I tend to learn more through observing and watching the instructor coach or correct other students. For whatever reason, the information just kind of sinks in and sets better with me. And I don't know, it's probably because I'm in my own head when the instructor's working with me one-on-one and I'm sitting there overthinking everything. But when I'm able to sit there and observe the instructor working with another student that's having the same issue that I'm having, I tend to grasp and retain that information much better.
Yeah, no, that's good that you know that. I mean, like people learn in different ways for sure, and you can learn. People ask me like who I've learned from, and I always say I've learned a lot from a lot of people, but it's been very indirect. Like, it's from like what you said, watching them talk about something or talking to somebody else or whatnot. I really didn't earlier on. Just there wasn't as much back then, and availability. I really didn't have many people personally one-on-one show me too many things. I learned from other people, but I learned from, more indirectly.
I know you're a couple hours ahead of us, so I want to give you the rest of the evening back. Before we do that, I want to make sure that we kind of gave the course the full respect that it deserved. Is there anything about Real Speed Pistol that we should have talked about that we didn't get into?
I mean, not really. Just general overview. It's my course of practical shooting skills. I mean, people that, that would carry or use a gun in any way, or obviously people compete, just your basic skills of shooting a handgun fast and accurately that are, I think, the most, practical out there as far as like the skills that you actually just are going to need if it comes down to it. So, yeah, and I have kind of somewhat of a set thing, but it totally varies from place to place, range to range on some of the drills and what they have or whatnot. But overall, it's just being a better practical shooter. Try to keep things fairly simple.
And for any listeners out there that might be interested in hosting you, is that something that you do? Have gun, will travel, and what are the requirements for that?
Yeah, I go anywhere, when I am open. And I go to a lot of other countries too. A lot of other guys don't really like to do that, but I have gone to other countries. And so anybody that's remotely interested, I'm super easy to contact. I mean, email me, my email, or just Google my name, Robert Vogel. I'm easy to find, and I respond. But I'll go as far as club-wise, if you have a place in mind. I ask me, hey, what would it take? That's usually how most of mine happen. Somebody emails me, hey, man, what would it take to bring you out to this place and do a class? And I'll respond back, and okay, this is what it would take. And you can make it happen. And then I do a lot of stuff, private stuff, usually smaller numbers, 1 to 4 people normally that come to my place in Ohio. But I like doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. So, yeah.
Awesome. Andy, any final thoughts?
Absolutely. First of all, I got to say thanks to Robert for coming on the show tonight. We say this every single podcast. Oh, man, we want to train with you. We want to have the opportunity. But with the amount of instructors that we speak with weekly, 1 a week at least minimum.
Sure.
I want to just personally thank you for coming on the show because, I feel like you're one of the greats, Robert, and just being able to have the opportunity to sit here and talk to you. So I just want to personally thank you for doing that. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I always say yes to these things. I always tell people ask me, And that's just, I kind of feel like, obviously I want to do it it's good for me to promote myself or whatnot too, but just like, I feel like, why not? I kind of owe it to, I've been able to do this for a living, and I owe it to talk to anybody and just kind of tell them how I feel about things and whatnot. So I appreciate you asking me.
Yes, it was, you mentioned the podcast that you're 42, and I'm like, man, you're not old enough to be the legend in the industry that you are. It's kind of, so those worlds collided for me. I'm like, wait a second, 42, like.
Yeah, well, I started, I'm not that old, I guess, in the scheme of life. I feel a little bit old, but I was able to start very young, 15, and then started competing 19. And I'd I just say retired from the competition thing. Who knows in the future? But I've kind of got out of that a little bit earlier than I could have. But I feel like I found my niche in this instructing thing, and I really like that. And yeah, so we'll see what happens with time.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate all of our listeners jumping on and hanging out with us this evening. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.